We have some things to talk about today. Massive has released some developer notes regarding prototype gear. And from initial impressions and looking at social media, it would appear that the developers, in fact, did not listen at all to what anyone said or any of the feedback that was given. And they are, in fact, doubling down. But we shall see for ourselves. Year 8 Season 1 PTS developer notes. Escalation and prototype gear. We've carefully read the conversations about prototype gear, and we've decided to make adjustments based on your feedback. The idea of reducing expertise costs has been present since the early conversations about prototype gear. Unfortunately, those changes didn't make it in time for PTS and reinforce the sentiment that the max expertise upgrade or requirements for upgrading to prototype gear were too high. We heard your feedback, and although prototype gear is made to be rare, our PTS version of how you could upgrade or acquire it was not reflective of our real intentions for the season's launch. For this reason, we have decided to increase the drop rates for escalation and move forward with our plan to reduce expertise material costs. Right, because like the problem was, it was basically way fucking easier to get prototype gear by just crafting it than just having it drop. So another aspect of it that didn't make it to our PTS and won't be available at season launch as well is targeted loot. We're exploring some sort of daily targeted loot rotation to arrive soon, but the packed season brought challenges to its implementation, and we had to save it for future updates. We hope that when it arrives, we can give players more control over their experience and better reward your time and effort. I guess that's a better solution to that, because then you can go, okay, what loot is on rotation for this week? I'm going to just spam that dungeon. The problem that I can see with this, though, is that there could be a possibility that there are some weeks or some days, or however they format it, where the targeted loot that's available for escalation doesn't fit anybody, and then nobody is fucking running escalation at all because the loot that's dropping is just shite. So we'll see. We've also heard the community feedback about recalibration, and we will start to explore options to address this feedback in the future. However, as it was not part of the original design to have it with prototype gear, we don't have a timeline for that yet. Okay, finally, following the discussion about the value of raids and incursion after the new exotic blueprints added to the Black Tusk retaliation, we've decided to add a new reward to them directly connected to your endgame expansion, Prototype Core Cache. This cache will be a guaranteed reward for completing Operation Iron Horse or Operation Dark Hours in Paradise Lost, dropping 2 prototype cores. We hope that this will bring more reasons to play those experiences. While we don't have new exclusive rewards, prototype cores can be used for both upgrading from normal gear to prototype and to level up or re-roll augments. So we hope it can grant more resources to veterans looking to craft their prototype gear to build. Okay, cool. I mean, that's not bad. Sure. It's more ways to get prototype gear. I mean, if people are able to stomach matchmaking, that is. Like, if you're not able to stomach matchmaking, I know that doesn't really... That's not really applicable to you. Prototype gear is designed to push the current endgame further, not replace it, serving as an additional layer for our most dedicated players. This system is meant to offer new challenges and rare rewards while giving you something fresh to pursue. After 7 years of content, we're committed to continue to iterate on it. The main reason why we're implementing it during the beginning of Year 8 is to have time to polish the best version of it throughout the year. Please keep sharing your thoughts with us as we continue to listen to them closely. We're confident in our position, we're confident in our proposition, but we're also open to adjusting the route with your valuable feedback. I can't freaking read. So then they just changed the drop rates. Substantially increase the prototype gear drop rates and escalation, reduce the cost for expertise upgrades, 50% reduction for exotic components, 20% reduction for other materials, remove the requirement to have fully optimized gear when upgrading to cool. Remove the requirement to have fully optimized gear when upgrading to prototype. Oh, cool. Increase, I mean, that's good. That's good. That was like a huge barrier. Increase the chance for third attribute to be maxed out when upgrading prototype gear. Normalize prototype gear for raids, incursion, and PvP modes. Augments will be disabled for these modes. Stats will be set to their lowest number within the prototype range. Added prototype core cache as a reward. Okay. So they made some adjustments to PvP. Okay, so how do I feel about this? Well, my stance really hasn't changed. And I'm just going to read you basically the comment that I made about this. So here we go. This is echoing the very same very loud warning signals that mirror the exact formula Blizzard adopted with Mythic Plus and Legion. From that point forward, World of Warcraft became increasingly esport leaning, and it became aggressively vertically progressive. Every major patch effectively reset the value of all prior content and player progression because the best gear was almost entirely funneled into the newest seasonal activity. The result was a treadmill where entire swaths of the game became functionally sunset every 6 months. Not because the content was bad or players didn't engage with it, but because the reward structure made it irrelevant. Without dwelling on this aspect for too long, as prototype gear is the focus, Escalation is just literally Mythic Plus from World of Warcraft. It's structured nearly identically, with its scaling difficulty tiers and enemy affixes that mirror the abilities of even basic quest enemies in World of Warcraft. You could even draw the same parallel to the Pit in Diablo 4. When progression becomes too vertically concentrated, player agency shrinks. Prototype gear is just as, if not more, vulnerable to this problem than any other system we've seen, because of how the loot is structured in the division. Instead of players choosing activities they enjoy, as they do now, players feel compelled, if not obligated, even mandated, to run the one activity that drops the best version of the gear. Over time, this conditions the player base to treat all other content as filler, which weakens matchmaking pools, reduces build diversity, and undermines the long-term value of the broader ecosystem. A healthy loot system should create multiple viable progression paths, not a single dominant one. Prototype gear risks repeating the same structural issue, and while it might increase short-term engagement metrics, but at the cost of long-term content relevance and player motivation. Expanding on that point, one of the most serious downstream effects of vertically concentrated power systems is the emergence of community-driven gatekeeping. Across the content, access to content becomes dictated less by actual player skill and more by visible gear signals or, God forbid, parse data on websites like Raider.io. This pattern has played out repeatedly in World of Warcraft, particularly since the introduction of Mythic Plus in the Legion era, and into the modern day, and even before that during Wrath of the Lich King, where item level was being checked relentlessly. When a single gear tier becomes the dominant indicator of player readiness, players stop evaluating teammates based on competence, build understanding, or encounter knowledge. Instead, they rely on fast heuristics, item level, tier bonuses, or ahead of the curve. Whether a player has the newest must-have gear or not, the moment prototype gear becomes the clearly superior vertical progression path, it risks becoming a social requirement, regardless of whether that content actually demands for that level of power or the prototype gear is even scaled for it. In World of Warcraft, when new raid tiers release alongside the Race to World First, which is happening right now, by the way, top-end players optimize aggressively because they are competing at the highest possible level. But the broader community often mirror those standards without context. This results in a cascading inflation of perceived minimum requirements. Players begin demanding gear levels far above what the content is tuned for, or better yet, even demanding for higher gear levels than what they were just asking for not just 2 hours ago, because the item level becomes a proxy for reliability, and we see this constantly, season after season, raid tier after raid tier. High-end players optimize early, community perception shifts about what is required, group leaders begin filtering applicants more aggressively, players without the new gear struggle to access the content that drops the gear, participation narrows to an increasingly smaller slice of the player base, no prototype items, kick, no prototype Lexington, kick. That's a whole other discussion, as you can only earn Lexington from seasonal caches, but Moving on, at that point, the system stops being aspirational and starts becoming exclusionary and mandatory. Players who may be perfectly capable of completing the content are filtered out before they even have an opportunity to demonstrate competence. This will inevitably and disproportionately impact players who don't treat the game like a second job, shrinking the active pool of participants and weakening matchmaking health overall. Prototype gear risks creating gatekeeping social dynamics and further separation of casuals, veterans, hardcore players, and esport. Even if prototype gear power increase is only situationally relevant, its existence alone as a higher visible tier signals best available, and that signal alone is enough to shape player behavior. We've seen this in Diablo, Path of Exile, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV, Destiny 2, the list goes on. Groups will begin listing prototype-only expectations. Players will inspect each other, build diversity narrows because experimentation carries social risks, guides will be created of best possible loadout as per the simulation, and players will be expected to follow it. The end result is a powerful shift away from playing the game and enjoying it for what it is, actually mastering the content, and instead toward simply having the correct label on your gear just to get accepted into matchmaking. One of Division 2's strengths has been that players can meaningfully contribute across a wide range of activities without being hard filtered by a single vertical metric. Preserving multiple viable progression paths helps maintain healthier matchmaking pools and reduces social friction between casual, mid-core, veterans, and highly optimized players. If prototype gear becomes the dominant signal of player legitimacy, it risks recreating the same participation bottlenecks that have strained World of Warcraft's group ecosystem for nearly a decade, or any other MMO's ecosystem, and that will bleed into the Division 2 if this system is solidified the way it is now. In closing, a serious conversation needs to be had about the direction of this game. Is it an esport? Is it an MMO? Is it both? Or is it a tactical RPG looter shooter? That's how I feel about it. And the developer notes, while indicating that they're making a couple of changes to ways that you can acquire prototype gear, like with the prototype caches, they failed to address this problem. And this problem, I think, is being largely ignored, but either ignored or not acknowledged, or people just don't know about it and can't see it. But this is the core fundamental problem with prototype gear. And it's not that prototype gear can't exist, but the way it exists and how it's shepherded needs to be done surgically. It needs to be very carefully handled, because if it's not, this will happen. This has happened time and time again, like multiple different games. So that's how I feel about it. It was nice that they kind of acknowledged a couple things, but it wasn't very nice to see that they're doubling down on a few things. So we'll see how it plays out. The only thing I can really suggest is continue giving feedback and continue voicing concerns and whatnot on official threads and whatnot, and just keep trying to make your voice to be heard, because the way that I see it right now, at least the perception on Twitter and Reddit and other social media avenues, is that people are largely unhappy right now. And even with the developer notes, they're not satisfied. And let me just be clear. Nobody's asking that prototype gear is being structured in a way that it's a handout, but what they are asking is that it's not tuned for the hyper invested, hyper optimized second job individuals that can really only play the game for 18 hours a day. Like, what they're asking for is making this in even a fraction of the capacity that it is right now to actually be accessible to the broader player base. Because, again, I keep coming back to this, as I've said multiple times. We've seen this structure collapse and get basically only designed for the hyper optimized in multiple titles. So I keep bringing up World of Warcraft because World of Warcraft is like my strongest frame of reference because I've played that on and off since 2007. I know other games mirror very similar systems, you know, notably Destiny 2, Diablo with the pit and whatnot. But I think the reason why people don't really have so much of a problem with those systems is because of just kind of how accessible they are. And it's not that like, oh, they're so accessible to where it devalues or undermines top end players from having something to strive for. They're accessible enough to where even people that are not that invested in the game have some sort of way of engaging with it, right? And that engagement is satisfying. And I was saying this a while back. Blizzard has had over 10 years of iteration on Mythic Plus. Now, I have my own reservations about Mythic Plus, and a lot of that has to come down to kind of the community in World of Warcraft and the way that the community kind of responds to well, as I was saying, raced world first, right? When a new raid tier releases alongside the race of world first, you know, the community basically goes, oh, if you're not playing like Team Liquid, then get the fuck out of my group kind of thing. And we saw this, in, it was basically every single raid tier during the War Within. Literally in the War Within, and even before that, but most recently the War Within, people were asking for item level, and I'm trying to remember what it was. People were running M0 because Mythic Plus hadn't released yet, so everybody was just running M0. And then as soon as Mythic Plus unlocked alongside the raid tier, and then Team Liquid, Echo, Method, and all of those esports teams started running their M0s so they can get their Mythic Plus unlocked. They were all asking for like 705, 710, and whatnot just to get into Mythic Zero. And the gear that dropped from Mythic Zero was like 694. And people were clearing it at like 690. Or 698. But fucking these esports teams were asking for like 10, 15, 20 item levels above what M0 dropped. And then literally in real time, the matchmaking pools or the group finders all flipped to mirror the exact item level that Liquid, Method, Echo, were all asking for, like, immediately. And a lot of those group leaders and a lot of people in those groups didn't even have that gear to begin with. And it was like, why are we asking for gear that is disproportionate to the item level that even fucking drops from this content? It's like in real time. And by the way, this is what's really fucked up about it, is that I had been running M0 all day, and I had been like top in the DPS charts, like banging number 1, number 2 on DPS charts, and I was clearing M0 no problem. And I mean, for the people that were there, we ran M0 all fucking day. Like, we were doing, like, that was a long live stream. That was like 12 hours or something. We were running M0 all day in anticipation. We were trying to get geared up. And then literally in real time, it fucking flipped, and then I couldn't get invited to a single group. Not a single group would like, like real time. And it was like, What the fuck, man? It's like I've been running M0 all day, clearing it no problems, like nobody wiped. I was topping DPS charts. We were having a good day. And then in fucking real time, just flipped. And then I couldn't get invited to a single group. And it was like, okay, I guess I'm done playing the game for today. Like, dude, and the reason why I bring stuff like this up is because, well, prototype gear risks literally the same thing. That's how I feel. That's how I feel about this stuff.